What if Earth's survival depended on cat memes and office pranks? Seems absurd, right? Get ready for a wild ride where invading aliens get tangled up in humanity's quirks, turning our planet into the ultimate chaos zone. Ever seen an alien hive mind hosting pointless meetings? You will now. Join us as we dive into a battle where clever hacks and dark humor save the day. Curious yet? Stick around to find out how we confuse these extraterrestrials into retreat. Comment if you think human unpredictability can outsmart an advanced civilization. Corporal Jessica leaned back in her chair, feet propped up on the console, and surveyed the chaos on her screen. Tokyo's skyline shimmered in the early morning sun, but the real show was happening in the background. The swarm of nanomachines was eating through the city's tech like 1,000 tiny Pac-Men. "Sarge, I think we've got company," she called out to her superior, Sergeant Kim. He ambled over, coffee in hand, and peered at her screen. "What are we looking at, Jessica?" His voice betrayed no emotion, just that steady calm she found simultaneously comforting and infuriating. "Just your friendly neighborhood alien invasion. They're eating through our tech. Look." She zoomed in, watching the nanomachines dismantle an office building, reducing it to molecular dust. Kim frowned. "Any idea what they want? Why else would they show up here?" Jessica grinned darkly. "We're prime real estate." She flexed her fingers, feeling the familiar tingle at the prospect of a digital challenge. These Z-Drac didn't know what they were in for. Connecting her laptop to the EDF mainframe, she began to code, her mind racing through a million possibilities. "Jessica, what's the plan?" asked a voice behind her. David, her childhood friend and fellow hacker, had rolled his chair over. His bright green hair clashed violently with the sterile white of the command center. "Plan? We wing it, Dave. Always do." She smirked, but her eyes were hard. "I'm writing a worm. Something to get into their system and throw them off." David's brow furrowed. "That's risky." "So's breakfast," she muttered, fingers dancing across the keys. Moments later, she slapped the enter key. Boom, done. Nothing happened. The screen still displayed the ruthless deconstruction of Tokyo. "Nice try," Kim said. He sounded annoyed but not surprised. "Give it a second. They're probably setting up a PowerPoint to discuss the intrusion." Then a flicker. The nanomachines hesitated. Buildings that had been half digested now stopped disassembling. Jessica leaned forward, her breath catching. The swarm seemed to reconfigure, bunching together in odd formations. "What's happening?" David asked. "Looks like they're having a board meeting." Jessica laughed, but it was forced. She wasn't sure what she'd unleashed. Kim's eyes narrowed. "Keep monitoring, I'll inform command." 3 hours later, Jessica's unease had transformed into a smirking satisfaction. The Z-Drac were still reeling, splitting into smaller factions that seemed more concerned with holding committees on the appropriate use of cat memes than conquering Earth. "Jessica, you might have done more damage than you think," David whispered. Her response was cut off by an alarm. A holographic map popped up, showing the Z-Drac swarm concentrating over New York. Each little blip was moving, fast. "Well, that's not good," she said, gnawing on her bottom lip. "We've turned them into procrastinators, but they're still making a beeline for our biggest cities." Kim's voice boomed from across the room. "Jessica, David, prep for immediate deployment. We need to figure out what the hell is going on." "On it, Sarge," Jessica called back, her mind already racing with plans. This wasn't just some random attack. The Z-Drac were methodical, even in their current state of chaos. They had a mission. As they geared up, David shot her a questioning look. "You think we can stop them?" Jessica grinned wickedly, slipping a pair of brass knuckles into her pocket. "I'm thinking we can confuse the hell out of them. If they want a battle of wits, they picked the wrong planet." They boarded a transport, the hum and vibration of its engines masking the beating of her heart. Jessica tried to cloak her anxiety with bravado. After all, no one saw the hero sweating. "Remember, Jessica," she told herself, "heroes write their own stories." She just hoped hers wouldn't end in footnotes. Jessica marched through the debris of what was once a bustling Broadway street. Billboards flickered erratically, giving off a ghostly ambiance to the deserted Times Square. The nanomachines had decided this was their new headquarters, and the EDF had decided to crash the party. Looks like they've taken over our spotlight, eh, Dave? She nodded toward a cluster of Zdrak machines, huddled around a malfunctioning digital advertisement. The aliens seemed perplexed by the image of a dancing kitten wearing sunglasses. Definitely not Broadway material, David quipped, adjusting his comm unit. Jessica smirked. They're probably debating if they should offer it a job. Sergeant Kim led them through the wreckage, his face a mask of determination. Objective is simple. Get close enough to inject the next virus. We scatter their focus, they collapse. Jessica couldn't help but chuckle at the irony. So we're fighting aliens with cat memes. Funny, these guys underestimated us big time. Turns out our greatest weapon is our stupidity. David shot her a look. Hey, I resemble that comment. Their laughter was cut short when a low hum emanated from the cluster of nanomachines. The machines began to morph, creating shapes that vaguely resembled office cubicles and conference rooms. One even had a water cooler. Welcome to the Hive Mind's corporate headquarters, Jessica whispered, a mix of fascination and dread creeping up her spine. Get ready. Kim's voice was barely audible, but it held authority. Jessica, you're up. She nodded, crouching down and pulling out a small device from her backpack. A new virus delivery system, complete with all the lunacy she could muster. Her hands shook slightly as she programmed it, ignoring the implications of failure. She couldn't afford to think about it now. As she prepped, the Zdrak suddenly stopped their mimicry and began emitting strange, disjointed sounds, an eerie imitation of human chatter. They were learning, adapting. Her virus had thrown them off, but how long until they adjusted? Hey, aliens, Jessica called out, standing up with a confidence she didn't quite feel. Ever heard of multitasking? The Zdrak turned towards her, their erratic movements pausing in unison. It was unsettling. She gulped, taking a step forward. You see, she continued, injecting bravado into her voice, humans have this thing called procrastination. It's fascinating, really. We turn work into meetings about work, and nothing gets done. One of the larger entities tilted as if listening. Jessica hit the device's activation key and tossed it into their midst. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, chaos. The nanomachines scrambled, forming more absurd office equipment. Copy machines, coffee makers, even a break room complete with vending machines. They began emitting strange vibrations that sounded like elevator music. Kim's jaw tightened. It's working. They're becoming more disorganized by the minute. Jessica felt a surge of relief, quickly masked by determination. Don't get comfy just yet. We'll need a plan B if they catch on. David scanned the area. How much time do we have? Not much, Jessica muttered, watching the Zdrak. She could see the confusion spreading among them, but she knew it was temporary. They were aliens, not full-time employees of Dysfunction Inc. Pull back to the transport, Kim ordered. Regroup. We need another strike while they're distracted. As they made their way back, Jessica's thoughts were racing. They underestimated us big time, she thought. Classified us as simple, predictable. Her dark sense of humor kicked in. Joke's on them. Humans are the experts at wasting time. David jogged beside her, panting slightly. You really think we can win this? Jessica's eyes sparkled with a mix of mischief and resolve. Win? Dave, we're here to give them the ultimate lesson in human absurdity. They won't know what hit them. Their transport came into view, its engines ready to take them to the next front line. As they boarded, Jessica couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle wasn't just stopping the Zdrak. It was cleaving a part of humanity's chaos and turning it into their salvation. Let's show these aliens what humans do best, she said, strapping into her seat. Improvise, adapt, and confuse the hell out of the opposition. The transport touched down in the heart of a smoldering central park. Gnarled trees and twisted sculptures bore witness to the chaos unleashed by the Zdrak. Jessica's boots crunched over ash and leaves as she disembarked. They've really improved the place, haven't they? Jessica quipped, nudging a melted park bench with her boot. David's green hair was now speckled with gray dust. Remind me again why we thought this was a good idea? She shot him a sly grin. Because it was either this or let them turn our planet into a giant office cubicle. I'm not really into the whole interstellar corporate takeover. Kim's voice was steady as ever. We need to get to the central nexus. The swarm's fragmented, but they're starting to regroup. Jessica glanced at the skyline. Amidst the ruins, jagged towers of nanomachines sprawled, shimmering with a strange, almost hypnotic energy. Where's the fun if they're not putting up a fight? She drew out her tactical tablet, tapping into the Z-Drac communication lines. Flashes of nonsensical alien memos and fragmented dialogues crossed her screen. They were still trying to process human data, spitting out gibberish. Jessica, see anything useful? David looked over her shoulder. Useful? Not yet, she smiled. Hilarious? Absolutely. Get this, the latest directive is to optimize feline meme engagement. It's like they've become Reddit admins. Kim interrupted. Focus, Corporal. We need intel that can help us dismantle their nexus. Jessica's fingers flew over the tablet. Her latest plan was daring, bordering on reckless. But desperate times, right? She started coding a new worm, one that would inject even more disarray into their communication. Minutes later, she had a suitable chaos infuser. Okay, team, ready to crash this alien land party? David set up the portable antenna, aligning it to boost her signal. Let's make them regret ever touching our tech. They moved stealthily through the terrain, each step calculated. Silence seemed to blanket the park, broken only by the hum of the nexus growing louder with each step. Jessica couldn't tell if it was excitement or the proximity of the Z-Drac that quickened her pulse. Finally, they reached a vantage point overlooking the nexus. The alien machines loomed, part sculpture, part living entity. Tendrils of nanomachines writhed, creating an immense, pulsating core. Kim's voice dropped to a whisper. We're in range, Jessica, whenever you're ready. She inhaled deeply, feeling the gravity of the moment. All right, let's introduce them to human chaos, version 2.0. With a swipe of her finger, she injected the new worm into their systems. The Z-Drac reared back as if struck, their core flickering erratically. Colors shifted, and an unearthly noise filled the air. Jessica watched in amazement as the nexus began to fracture, pieces of it spiraling out in confused bursts. David, she gasped, I think it's working. Look at them. They've completely lost their coordination. Kim nodded approvingly. We've got a window. Let's disable their core before they can regroup. They descended from their vantage point, racing towards the core. Every step felt like an eternity. Jessica's heart pounded in her ears as she focused on the pulsing alien mass before them. Suddenly, a new cluster of nanomachines emerged, reforming into defensive drones. Jessica pulled a small EMP device from her pack. I got this. Cover me. With precision, she flung the EMP into the cluster, watching with grim satisfaction as it detonated. A wave of disruption washing over the drones. They crumpled, lifeless. Keep moving, Kim barked. They reached the nexus, planting explosives around its base. The core throbbed with alarming intensity, but Jessica kept her eyes on the prize. Setting the timer, she glanced at David. His face mirrored her determination. Ready for the grand finale? David grinned. Let's give them a show they'll never forget. They retreated to a safe distance. Jessica's finger hovered over the detonator. Any last words? Before David could respond, a deep, resonant pulse echoed from the core. Jessica's breath hitched. No time for second thoughts. Earth doesn't do encores. She pressed the detonator. An explosion shattered the night, and for a moment, silence reigned. The nexus crumbled in a cascade of luminous particles, disintegrating into nothingness. Jessica exhaled, adrenaline fading. We did it, she whispered. Kim approached, nodding approval. Well done, but this war isn't over. Jessica stared at the ruins of the nexus, a mix of relief and dread swirling within her. Of course not, she muttered. This was just the opening act. As they headed back to the transport, Jessica couldn't help but smile. Humanity, 1. Alien bureaucracy, 0. The fight wasn't over, but for now, they'd turned the tide. The dawn broke over the smoldering remnants of New York City, casting an eerie orange glow over the debris. Jessica stood at the edge of a crater that had once been a bustling intersection. Now it looked like one of her uncle's barbecues gone horribly wrong. Guess the Z-Drac aren't into subtlety, she muttered, eyeing the wreckage. David appeared beside her, adjusting his gear. Subtlety's overrated. Give me a good explosion over stealth any day. Jessica laughed, spoken like a true pyromaniac. Sergeant Kim interrupted their banter with a grim expression. The Z-Drac are consolidating at Central Park. This could be their last stand. Or ours, Jessica added darkly. They gathered their equipment, meticulously checking weapons and devices. Each member of the team was quietly absorbed in their thoughts. Even David, usually so talkative, was silent. Jessica knew everyone felt the gravity of this moment as sharply as she did. They approached Central Park, now a twisted blend of alien constructs and familiar landmarks. The core of the Z-Drac hive mind was there, pulsating like a grotesque heart. Stay sharp, Kim ordered. We'll split up. Jessica, David, you take the west flank. I'll lead the rest through the main entrance. Jessica saluted, a smirk playing on her lips. Roger that, boss. We'll give them a show they won't forget. David shot her a sidelong glance as they crept towards their position. Ever think we'd be saving the world together? I thought we'd at least get paid for it, she replied, fingers tightening around her weapon. In the distance, the Z-Drac formed ranks, their bodies shifting between solid and liquid states. It was mesmerizing, like watching living metal. Eyes on the prize, Jessica reminded herself. This isn't a laser show. She readied her EMP grenades, eyes fixed on the largest cluster. Throwing one, she watched as the electromagnetic pulse rippled through them. The alien forms spasmed, disoriented. David opened fire, blaster shots cutting through the chaos. I think they're mad, he noted, ducking behind a fallen tree. Jessica grinned. Good. They need to know we're matter. Bolstered by the initial success, they pushed forward. The Z-Drac adapted quickly, reforming their lines and launching counterattacks. Energy bolts singed the air around them, forcing Jessica and David to move swiftly from cover to cover. Her mind raced. Think, Jessica. What's their weak spot? As if reading her thoughts, David yelled, Their core! We need to disrupt their central command. It's the only chance we've got. On it! She shouted back, adrenaline surging. She eyed a path through the alien ranks, a narrow corridor offering a straight shot to the core. Cover me, Jessica ordered. She sprinted forward, feet pounding the ground in a furious rhythm. Time seemed to slow as she weaved through enemy fire, every step carrying the weight of the world. She reached the core, its pulsating energy almost hypnotic up close. Without hesitation, she planted the last of her EMP charges around it. Jessica, hurry! David's voice crackled through her comm. Just a sec, she replied, her fingers flying over the detonator. Message for the Z-Drac. You should have picked another planet. With a final, resolute press, the EMP charges detonated. The core convulsed, a wave of energy cascading outward. The Z-Drac faltered, their coordinated attacks turning into disarrayed spasms. Jessica stumbled back, breathless. David, it's working. We've got them on the ropes. Kim's voice broke through the chaos. Fall back to the rendezvous. We need to regroup before their next wave. They joined the rest of the team, retreating to a safer distance. The Z-Drac's hive mind continued to fragment, losing coherence as the EMP pulses wreaked havoc. As they regrouped, Jessica couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. The tide had turned, but she knew the battle was far from over. Nice work out there, Kim said, a rare note of approval in his voice. Jessica nodded, wiping sweat from her brow. We're not done yet, but for now, let's celebrate the small victories. David clapped her on the back. Epic as always, Jess. She smiled, a dark humor glinting in her eyes. Just doing my part to keep Earth's weirdest office party from spreading. They watched the remnants of the Z-Drac struggle against the chaos they'd unleashed. This war wasn't over, but tonight, humanity had proven it could stand against the odds. And Jessica couldn't wait to see what tricks they'd pull next. Jessica stood center stage in a makeshift control room at the rebuilt EDF headquarters. The walls buzzed with activity, holographic screens displaying fractured Z-Drac networks. She had to admit it was kind of poetic, humans turning chaos into order for once. Jessica, Kim's voice cut through the noise, we've picked up some disturbing chatter. The Z-Drac are regrouping faster than we anticipated. Not even a minute to bask in our glory, she sighed, fingers tapping on her data pad. She scanned through the intercepted transmissions, recognizing segments of frantic alien code. They were adapting, learning from their defeats. David leaned over with a curious look. "What's the plan, hero?" She smiled tightly. "We hit them with something they can't adapt to." Kim was giving orders to other squads, preparing for another wave. Jessica knew time was slipping through their fingers. The Zedrak were wounded, but like any cornered beast, they could still be deadly. She and David received a briefing from Kim, who pointed to a 3D map of the city. "We've identified their rally point. Here, the remnants of the hive mind are forming a last-ditch fortress. We have one shot to dismantle it for good." "Sounds like a blast," Jessica quipped, but there was a heaviness to her words. She couldn't help but wonder if this final strike would cost them everything. They geared up, tension thick in the air. Every movement felt like a prelude to something catastrophic. As they boarded the armored transport, Jessica felt a strange calm wash over her. "David, ever feel like we're starring in the longest action movie ever made?" He chuckled, complete with bad lighting and no bathroom breaks. Their banter helped. It kept the fear at bay. The transport rumbled through the fractured streets. The skyline, once proud and towering, now served as a ghostly reminder of what they were fighting for. They reached their destination, a central hub constructed from the reconstituted ruins of a skyscraper. The Zedrak had fortified it with their peculiar blend of organic and mechanical defenses. "Time to earn our paychecks," Jessica muttered, stepping out and surveying the alien fortress. David smirked. "Let's make it memorable." Jessica's strategy was audacious, a simultaneous strike from all sides, using every trick they'd learned. They split into teams, synchronized to the second. She and David took the south side, weaving through debris and dodging sporadic alien patrols. "Remember the good old days, hacking security systems for fun?" David whispered. "Back when the worst thing online was dial-up," Jessica replied darkly. "Simpler times." A sudden clang echoed from the building, and a swarm of nanomachines burst through a fissure. Jessica's heart raced as she deployed another EMP device, watching it detonate and ripple through the swarm. "Keep moving," she shouted, adrenaline sharpening her focus. Kim's voice came through their comms. "Engage the main core. We're almost at the north entrance." They reached the inner sanctum of the fortress, where the core pulsed a hypnotic blue. Jessica could feel its energy, a palpable force that spoke of power and desperation. "So this is it," she murmured, planting charges around the core's base. The beating heart of their operation. David's hands were steady as he set the timers. "Got your epic one-liner ready?" She smirked. "How's this? Earth is closed for business." The final seconds stretched like eternity. They cleared the area and joined the rest of the team outside, breaths ragged, nerves taut. "Everyone in position?" Kim called out. Jessica confirmed. This was it, the point of no return. She pressed the detonator, and for a moment the world held its breath. The explosion was both silent and deafening, a shockwave that felt like the universe resetting itself. The core disintegrated, its energy unraveling into nothingness. The alien constructs collapsed in a cascade of light, dismantled at an elemental level. Jessica's legs wobbled, relief threatening to bring her to her knees. She looked at David, whose face mirrored her disbelief. "Did we just win?" Kim's rare smile was a beacon of victory. "We just reclaimed our planet." The aftermath was a blur of cheers, tears, and the overwhelming sense of survival. They stood among the ruins, a testament to resilience and the human spirit. Jessica looked at the horizon, the first rays of a new dawn breaking. "Looks like Earth's back in business." David grinned. "So what's next for our hero?" She laughed, the sound feeling alien and liberating. "Saving the world one sarcastic comment at a time?" As they walked back to the transport, Jessica felt a pang of loss for the simplicity they'd forever left behind. But there was also hope, a fragile, resilient thread that stretched into the future. She glanced back at the remnants of the Zedrak fortress and then at her friends. "Let's rebuild," she said softly, "and this time, let's get it right." Their journey was far from over, but together, they'd proven that humanity had a fighting chance. And for Jessica, that was more than enough.